Batman v Superman: The Ultimate Edition. So this is the 30-minute longer director's cut of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice that came out in theaters back in March. Now this is one of the strangest cases for a director's cut, being that the WB and Zack Snyder were really promoting this movie almost like immediately after the theatrical cut came out. I don't even think it was out 2 days before we started hearing that there was a rated R cut coming out on Blu-ray. So this movie's been really highly anticipated because it's been billed as being an improvement on a lot of the problems that people had with the theatrical cut. All the crazy edits and the Africa scene that just didn't flesh out, and a lot of things that were kind of left without any connective tissue. So the big question that everybody has once this Ultimate Edition has come out is it a big improvement on the theatrical cut? And yes, it is. They do a lot of things better in this Ultimate Edition that makes you wonder who the hell edited the theatrical cut. That being said, it doesn't take Batman v Superman from a terrible movie to one of the best movies ever. But anybody that has a problem with the theatrical cut, I think, will walk away from this one liking the movie a lot more than they did walking out of the theater. So I'll start with some of the good things that I liked about this Ultimate Edition over the theatrical cut. Well, actually, before that, when I walked out of the theatrical cut, I was disappointed, but I did not hate the movie. I liked everything with Batman. I thought Ben Affleck was awesome. I didn't care for hardly any of the Superman story. I think Henry Cavill had a lot of bad lines. He really wasn't delivering any of them very well. He was very wooden. Anything that had to do with Lois Lane just annoyed me because seemed like she was thrown in there just to give Amy Adams some screen time. I did not like Lex Luthor at all. None of his motivations really made any sense to me. Superman's motivations weren't really there. Batman's motivations were there, but that was really the only driving force in the movie. And they made a lot of missteps with that theatrical cut. So that being said, some of the things that I thought that they did really well in this Ultimate Edition, making the movie better. So first off, this Africa scene towards the beginning of the movie is way more fleshed out. It makes a lot more sense, and you really understand its place in the overall story better in this Ultimate Edition. They give a lot more. There's a lot more to that scene in the Ultimate Edition. Before, it was just kind of seemed like randomly thrown in, and it seemed like it was just trying to over-explain why the world and Batman were just unsure about Superman. When everybody walked out of that theatrical cut going, why did we even need that scene? He destroyed half the city of Metropolis. Isn't that enough to get the movie going? And the way it's fleshed out in the Ultimate Edition, it makes a lot more sense, and it actually has a home in the movie. A lot of people found out after they walked out of the theatrical edition that the cameraman that got shot in the head in this scene turned out to be Jimmy Olsen, which was weird because he's a really big character in the Superman universe, and they didn't even give him a name really in the theatrical edition. Well, they do name him Jimmy Olsen in this edition. He comes up and he talks to Lois, introduces himself, and through the scene it kind of shows that he is kind of like a plant for the CIA trying to get this general in Africa to defuse his civil war. And after him being shot, this triggers a drone strike. Now that Lois Lane is about to be in the blast zone of a drone strike, this causes Superman to show up. He flies into the drone, or the missiles, and comes down and saves her, and the scene kind of continues the way it does in theatrical edition. But the people who were hired by Lex Luthor start burning all the people that they just shot, making it look more like Superman killed them. When before in the theatrical cut, he swoops in, saves Lois Lane, then all of a sudden it cuts and everybody's like, oh, Superman killed all these people in Africa. And you're like, how did they come to that conclusion? What the fuck? So that scene makes way more sense. Superman really as a whole has a lot more scenes and feels like a larger part of the story, where before it almost seemed like Batman was kind of the main focus of the movie and Superman was just around kind of as a story device. Now Superman has a lot more screen time almost, and Batman, although his screen time is not short by any means, he's kind of like the side character of the movie now. So Superman has a lot more scenes with him being a reporter for the Daily Planet, and his search and his motivation for taking on Batman is way better established. He goes to Gotham in one scene, and he starts hearing about all the brutality, everybody's afraid of this bat vigilante, and the guy that he brands. It shows a lot more with what actually happens to these guys once they're in prison if they have the bat brand. So all that's pretty cool, and that was one of the main complaints that I had about the first one, was that Superman was just kind of there. He wasn't really doing anything. And when Superman sacrifices himself as well, at the end, whenever he's fighting Doomsday and he takes a spear and sacrifices himself, being that he has so much more screen time now, that ending holds a lot more emotional weight, and you actually feel for him, where now his story is kind of, his story before was just kind of being a device in a Batman movie. Now his story is more him trying to find his place in this world, where no matter what, he tries to save people, he tries to do the right thing, and either people still get hurt, or people are still pissed off at him, and people still don't really appreciate what he's doing, and he's just trying to figure out, okay, do I need to keep doing this? Should I quit? Where's my place in this world? And they have a really good scene that makes it holds a lot more weight now too, with Pa Kent, whenever he goes up to the top of that mountain, and he's gonna have his ghost dad basically talking to him about this story where him and his father were trying to prevent this flooding of their farm, so they were building a way to get the water to flow away from their property, and they ended up saving their farm, but while doing that, the water went and drowned somebody else's farm and all their animals. So it kind of gives him a story to kind of mirror his own problems, where, okay, no matter what, if you do something good, something bad usually will happen in turn of that, and you can't hold yourself responsible for all of it. Lois Lane, who was one of my biggest complaints about the theatrical edition, her story has a lot more purpose in the movie now. After the Africa scene is more fleshed out and makes a lot more sense, all of her drive throughout the story, where she's basically just going around searching for the truth about what happened in Africa and trying to clear Superman's name. Now you actually give a damn about what the hell she's doing, because before, that whole scene was just confused everybody, and then all of a sudden you have all this screen time dedicated to Lois Lane after that scene that you really don't care about, where in this Ultimate Edition it makes a lot more sense, and you're actually with her trying to figure out what happened, even though if you've seen the movie, you know what happened, but you're kind of following along with her investigation, trying to see where her story is going to go. So that was cool. Overall, just the movie feels like a lot more of build up to the fight. When everybody sees Batman v Superman, they're like, all right, when they're going to fight? And then that was a big thing that everybody hated. Like, hey man, you had to wait like an hour and a half for them to even exchange blows. And the way that the director's cut moves, it feels a lot more like build up to the fight and slow build and slow tension to it, where before it was more like everything was just kind of distracting and dragging to get to what everybody really wanted to see. Just overall, everything flows a lot better. All that erratic editing and jumping around and random scenes are gone. It all flows a lot better with everything being put back into the movie. It also leads a lot better into where they're taking the story in Justice League. Everybody saw the deleted scene that they put out. It was a day or two after the theatrical cut came out, where whenever the SWAT team goes in to get Lex Luthor out of the crashed ship, whenever they find him, there's this demon-looking being with these 3 boxes floating around, which turns out to be Steppenwolf. And it disappears, and then they arrest Lex Luthor, and then at the end of the movie, when Batman visits him in that prison cell, he's going on about, well, the bell's already been rung, and he's coming, he heard it, he's coming for all of us. And that scene makes a lot more sense now that they've added that little short teaser to Steppenwolf and Apocalypse. So that gives a lot more of a hint of things to come. Now that I've gotten through all of the good things, I want to talk about things that still don't work for me. And none of these problems are really anything that are more glaringly apparent with the Ultimate Edition. They're just things that are still there that the Ultimate Edition will not fix. Main one being Lex Luthor. So when Jesse Eisenberg was cast as Lex Luthor, he had a lot of people up in arms, like, why in the world would you cast this guy? Everybody wanted Bryan Cranston or somebody along those lines. Now, I love Bryan Cranston, but the way that they wanted Lex Luthor to be in this movie, kind of a young, internet, kind of like a Mark Zuckerberg type, then Bryan Cranston or somebody that caliber probably wouldn't have worked for the role. But the way that they write Lex Luthor and the way that they have him portrayed in this movie is just not Lex Luthor. He's more like the Riddler or somebody. He's just wacky and eccentric, and he's smart, but he just he's just weird. And when I saw the theatrical cut, it was a weakness, but it wasn't as glaringly apparent as it is now that everything else has pretty much been fixed. Now he's the main and one of the biggest weaknesses in the movie. The scene where he and Holly Hunter are in his father's study whenever she comes in. I believe she tells him that she's pulling his funding, or she's not letting him get kryptonite or something like that. And he's being his goofy self, and then as soon as she tells him that, he kind of stops and looks down and then looks back up at her, and he has this kind of menacing look, and his whole tone changes, and then he starts talking like he's a really menacing character. That one scene I like a lot. And that one scene, to me, should have been his tone throughout the movie. His wacky, weird, eccentric personality, I thought would have been a lot better if that was kind of his facade to everybody else. When he's in front of the cameras or whenever he has people around, that's who he acts like. And then whenever he's behind closed doors, actually being Lex Luthor, he's this menacing, serious type. That would have been cool. And I don't think anybody would have really minded the wacky parts if that's how it was, if that was just him kind of putting a play on for everybody, but that's not how it is. He keeps mentioning his father a lot in the first half of the movie or so. He says that his father's really the one that started the company, and, whenever he's in the study, oh, this is my father's room, I try to keep it here. So I don't really know if that was them kind of putting all those little hints in place in case people really don't like Jesse Eisenberg. They can always come out and say, oh, his father was the real Lex Luthor, or they can, kill him off, and then the father will end up being the villain throughout. Who knows? But I thought it was interesting that at least in this cut, it seems like he mentions his father in almost every scene for the first half of the movie. But his motivations are still really unclear in the movie. It just seems like the only way you can really try to explain it is that he's angry at God and he wants to prove he can take down a god, and Superman's the closest thing to that. He always says a god and you're God, and he just keeps mentioning that, but that's all you get. You don't really see anything that really Superman does personally to make him want to kill him. And I still find myself kind of searching for that when I'm watching the movie. They could have done something where, in the opening scene where, Bruce Wayne is running around trying to save people, and Wayne Enterprises, that big tower comes down, and that kind of starts Bruce Wayne's vendetta against him. They could have easily done something similar with Lex Luthor, but I don't know. There's just his motivations are still kind of cloudy. Things that they still don't really explain, even with the extra screen time. How does he know who Batman and Superman are? I mean, clearly from the beginning of the movie, whenever he starts pulling the strings and, trying to set up this fight, he knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman and he knows that Clark Kent is Superman, but it never shows how the hell he figured that out, or who told him, or how he got a hold of that information. So that's something that still goes unexplained. How did he know that lead blocks Superman's X-ray vision? So there's a scene that they add in this movie after the whole Capitol bombing where the guy in the wheelchair explodes. Lois Lane is investigating that, and Jenna Malone's character tells her that, well, the wheelchair was encased in lead, or the bomb was encased in lead. So where Superman felt bad, like he wasn't looking for the bomb, he let everybody die, it was actually because he couldn't see it. They haven't even established that in the movies, I don't believe. So how did he know that lead blocks his vision? How did he know how to operate that crashed Kryptonian ship? How did he know how to create Doomsday by cutting himself and putting blood in that little ooze? There's a lot of things with him that's just very conveniently written, like he just knows everything, and it's aggravating when you watch and you have all this extra screen time, but they still don't have anything in the script to try to explain those conveniences. But yeah, so Lex Luthor's still the main issue for me with this movie. The other main issue, which I kind of started to get into there at the end, was that there's a lot of things in the script that just don't make sense in spots. The script is strong in certain spots, and then there's certain spots where it's very convenient, and things are very stupid, and they don't make any sense. And it's weird to me that when somebody's reading this on paper, or when they're seeing this, they're filming this scene, that doesn't pop into their head, okay, this doesn't really flow. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, like, for example, the opening scene. It's an awesome scene that opens the movie where Bruce Wayne lands in Metropolis at the end of Man of Steel, whenever, the Terraformer is destroying the city and Superman and Zod are flying around fighting each other. And he's driving around trying to avoid the chaos, and he's calling one of his guys in the Wayne Enterprises, and he's yelling at him, telling him to get everybody out the building. Why the hell do they need Bruce Wayne's approval to get the fuck out of the building? It shows the scene where the guy's on the phone with Bruce Wayne, and he turns around, and you can see the Terraformer clear as day destroying shit, and they're still up there trying to file papers. To me, that's hilarious. Like, Bruce Wayne's like, I need you to get everybody out the building. Why the fuck are you even there in the first place? You should have been gone. They kind of wrote that convenience in there so that they can give, Bruce Wayne something to run towards. But that still is kind of strange. They chose to make Gotham and Metropolis just across the river from each other. Kind of like a New York and Chicago or something like that, or a New York and New Jersey. But with them doing that, it kind of raises a question. Okay, so Superman's been in Metropolis how long, yet he's never heard of Batman, even though the shit's right across the river? Pretty sure Batman would be a pretty prominent figure in the news. And you work for a newspaper. But, okay, moving on from that one. The teaser scenes of the other DC heroes are still pretty lazy. Where they Batman steals the information from Lex Luthor, and Diana Prince steals it, and he ends up stealing it back. Where there's these little footage, these little files that Lex Luthor had with footage of the Flash and footage of Cyborg and footage of Aquaman and that picture of Wonder Woman. To me, it still seems like he originally wanted to do a post-credit scene, but either Zack Snyder or WB wanted to separate themselves from Marvel so much that they had to figure out some way to splice it into the middle of the movie instead of keeping something like that until a little post-credits teaser where it would make sense for it to be out of context. But it just seems really, again, it's really convenient. He's got all this footage. He even creates logos for them, which is the exact logo that they have in the comics. And somehow Bruce Wayne has Diana Prince's email that he can send this to her and ask her who she is. Just weird. It's also unclear how Superman knows that Bruce is Batman. So there's the one scene in the party at Lex Luthor's party where Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent first meet, and as Bruce Wayne leaves, Alfred talks to him on his little earpiece, and Superman kind of cocks his head like he hears it, but he doesn't say anything aside from it's something like, okay, the thing's done downloading or something along that line. And so you're supposed to, I guess, connect the dots that from that little piece of information, Superman just knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, because whenever he shows up to fight Batman, he says, Bruce, I was wrong. And they don't show any scene that really cements that okay, now he knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And if he did know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, he could have just as easily, in that scene wherever he just shows up when Bruce Wayne is, or when Batman is chasing the kryptonite, he could have just showed up anywhere where Bruce Wayne was and be like, hey man, your jig's up, I know who you are, the Bat's dead. But yeah, that's just, all he does is hear Alfred talk through his earpiece, so it almost seems like there's another scene that's missing. But that's just another dot that you're forced to kind of connect by yourself. This is a big one. So this is one that a lot of people were not on board with the theatrical cut, the Martha moment. So whenever after Batman basically has Superman down, about to kill him, Superman's like, no, you have to save Martha. And then, Batman, why'd you say that name? It doesn't work any better. It's exactly the same scene. I see what they were going for. I think somebody just, when they were, it might have been Chris Terrio, or I forgot the other guy that wrote it. When they were writing this script, somebody just had a light bulb moment. They said, whoa, wait, Superman and Batman both had the same first name for their mom. They're both named Martha. We could use that. They could have done it and they could have made it work, but the way that they handle it is kind of sloppy. Batman obviously has a big hole in his heart from where his mom and his dad died, so that is something that triggers for him. So what they're trying to do is, okay, so he's got him down, he's about to murder this guy, and he just sees him as an alien, and then he says something that triggers Batman's emotions and makes him realize, okay, this isn't an alien, this is a person. And he has a mom, and he's loved, and he loves somebody else, and I'm about to murder this person. And then that makes him stop, or makes him question what's going on. All that could have worked if they had done it better. The way Henry Cavill delivers a line is a little bit and the way they have it set up is just very fast. The fight is pretty good, and then within a minute, it seems like he goes from getting ready to stab Superman through the heart to, all right, we're best friends now, I'm going to go help you. And they could have handled that way better. They should have made that whole ending of that fight marinate just a little bit longer. And even if they did, go with the Martha thing, it's just that, like I said, that they go from enemies to best friends way too fast. Okay, so I'm not going to kill this guy, but all of a sudden I'm best friends with him and I understand all of his motivations, and I'm going to I'm going to risk my life helping him. It's convenience. So that's the big one that's still kind of a glaring what the hell moment. It's exactly the same in this cut. So if it didn't work for you in the theater, it's not going to work anymore for you at home. The other scene to me that was just it was laughably bad in the theaters, and it's still really bad here. I really wish they would have cut it out. Everything with Lois Lane and that fucking spear. Whoever wrote that and shot that and edited that, they should have known that shit was stupid and just cut it out completely. So Lois Lane, after Batman decides not to kill Superman, he tosses the spear aside. And then whenever Batman goes off to save Martha Kent and Clark Kent goes off to get Lex Luthor, Lois Lane basically just stands around in that little area they were fighting in. And after, 10 or so minutes later, it cuts to her picking up that spear and walking over to the water and just throwing the spear into the water for whatever reason. Then the movie continues on. Batman has the warehouse fight, and I believe that at this point Doomsday's already showed up. So then you have the whole thing with Doomsday coming out, and then Superman trying to fight Doomsday and taking him up into space, and the nuclear blast, and Batman coming back and trying to fight Doomsday, and then Diana Prince or Wonder Woman shows up, and all this shit's going on, and then it cuts back to Lois, and she's still just standing in this area. And now she decides, that spear, I think I'll get that shit out the water now. So then she turns around, and then she's walking into the water all nonchalant, trying to find it, and, then it cuts back to fighting. And then it cuts back to her, and something falls on her, and now she's drowning. And then it cuts back to the fighting. And then it cuts back to her, and then Superman has to go save her. And then so Superman saves her, and then he jumps in to get the spear out of the water. And then he brings the spear out. And then as he's kind of gaining his breath again, then Lois Lane picks the damn thing up again and throws it 5 feet away for whatever reason. Like Superman can't walk 5 fucking feet and pick the thing up. Why is that still in the movie? Why? The other thing too, and this is kind of a side note, but they really go out of their way to explain things, more so in Man of Steel than this movie, but they really go out of their way to give a rational explanation for a lot of the things about Superman, about his lore, like why he can fly, and some of the details about his suit and everything like that. But 2 movies in, and they still don't bother to explain why no one can fucking recognize Clark Kent as Superman. I mean, the dude even the scene is hilarious to me whenever Perry White at the end of the movie, he's looking at the newspaper where it says Superman's dead, and it's got the Superman symbol and everything on the front, and then he turns a page, and then there's a big-ass picture of Clark Kent saying, Clark Kent, beloved reporter of Daily Planet, is lost in the fight. And it's just, it's almost like a wink moment, I guess, but to me it's just, they can't find any way to explain why just putting on a pair of glasses, all of a sudden he's camouflaged from everybody. But anyway, that's a little side note. So those things in the script still to me are just glaringly weak, and things that they should have punched up, and things that just really don't make sense still. Like I said about Superman, so Superman has a lot more to do in this movie, but again, I still think Henry Cavill's acting in this one just isn't as good as it was in Man of Steel. In Man of Steel, he was given a lot of emotional moments, like when Pa Kent died, and when he had to kill Zod, and when he first starts jumping around and flying, and he's real happy. Like he has a lot of moments where he can show emotion, and he's just very one note in this movie. Like even the scenes where he should show emotion, he's standing in the middle of the Capitol, and that bomb goes off and incinerates everybody, and then it cuts to him just kind of shaking his head in the middle of the fire, and he just doesn't even hardly look sad. He's just like, oh man. And that's something that they really need to either write better for him or get a better performance out of him going forward, because you really don't want one of your big 2 superheroes being, Batman and Superman. You really don't want one of them being a glaring weakness. And when you're standing next to Ben Affleck acting, it shows as a weakness a lot more than it would if he was by himself. So they really need to fix that in the Justice League movies, or if they do another Man of Steel movie, because that was a weakness in this movie as well. The last thing I'll talk about too, and this really isn't the filmmakers' fault because they never came out and said anything official, but Jenna Malone's role. Now, from the moment that she was cast, for whatever reason, everybody was jumping all over her role trying to figure out what it was. Everybody thought it was maybe Carrie Kelly, who was the Robin in the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel. They were thinking maybe Barbara Gordon as either Batgirl or Oracle. They were trying to figure out, okay, maybe she's this person, maybe she's that person. She's a scientist that talks to Lois Lane in 2, 30-second scenes. Her role is important in the story because in the new Ultimate Cut, she does give Lois Lane really good information that, propels her story forward in trying to clear Superman, but that's it. She's just a random scientist. She's not anybody in Batman lore. She's not anybody in Superman lore. So it was annoying to me that even in the trailer for the Ultimate Cut, she's one of the first scenes that they show in the trailer. Like, oh yeah, that Jenna Malone role that you guys were talking about, it's finally revealed in this edition. And it's nothing. She's in the movie just to be in the movie. It's a glorified cameo. She's not anything important. So that's kind of one of the negatives of this internet age. Something like that being so overhyped. Like she was going to be this big key character, almost as if the way that they did the X-Men Days of Future Past, like there was this whole rogue storyline that came through. It's nothing like that. She's just a device that kind of helps Lois Lane's story throughout. But that's the main thing, guys. If you liked Batman v Superman, you will like this cut better, I believe. I don't see anybody walking away from this feeling worse about the movie. If you were kind of on the fence like me, like there was things that you liked, but there was a lot of things that you thought they really screwed up, you will like this one better. If you're one of those people that walked out of Batman v Superman just pissed off and angry and hated every minute of it, and you didn't like Man of Steel and you just want Zack Snyder and everybody to just give up, I don't think this is going to change your mind. But give this Ultimate Edition a shot if Batman v Superman, the theatrical cut, didn't quite make it there for you. If you walked out of Batman v Superman giving it like a C, I guarantee this one will probably be at least a letter grade more. So go ahead and give it a shot. I think it's on VOD for PS4, Amazon Instant Video, stuff like that right now, and it should be coming out on Blu-ray I believe on the 14th, so you can wait and get that one as well. But give it a shot, guys.